Hey, welcome back to the podcast. You are listening to Stuff No One Told Us About Weight Loss. My name is Aaron and I'm here with Eloise. And today we're talking about sticking to new goals, habits and routines. So being 2022, most of us at this point have set ourselves new goals. Maybe we've adopted some new habits or we've thought about that. And in a few weeks' time comes the challenge of being able to stick to it for long periods of time, because everyone can do it for 2 weeks, but it's doing it long term that's the hard thing to do.
Yeah, we've been talking about goal setting a lot lately because of that time of year. And I think that a lot of people think really hard and they do a lot of planning when it comes to setting goals. And they think a lot about, okay, here's how I'm going to achieve the goal. But they don't think about beyond the excitement that they feel in the beginning and the motivation that they feel when they first set the goal. Rarely do people think about, how am I going to stick to this once I don't have any motivation anymore? How am I going to stick to this once it gets boring? How am I going to stick to this in a few weeks' time, months down the track, where that initial excitement is completely gone and you're just left with doing the work?
That's right. And I feel like for a lot of us, the last 2 years have really presented a lot of ups and downs with everything that's happened with the pandemic. And this year has a lot of uncertainty, because this time last year, we were sort of thinking, oh yeah, it's kind of like settling down, and then 2021 reared its ugly head and, it just flared up. So I think there's also an element of uncertainty there.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, what we think setting goals comes down to is building that ironclad bond with yourself, following through with what you say you're going to do. And that is a trained skill that you can build, you can work on. It's like anything, and it really starts with breaking things down into little micro commitments and following through with each one of those.
Yeah, and on that point as well, when we don't follow through with what we say we're going to do, and we don't stick to our habits, and we keep setting goals or telling ourselves that we're going to do this or that and then not following through, not only do we not develop those positive habits that make our life better, but also we lose self-trust. We lose that trust with ourselves, and we become we develop the identity that we're the type of person that doesn't follow through. So we don't trust our word anymore. We'll be like, oh, I'm going to do this, but deep down we know I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, well, think about it for a second. If you have someone that you really trust and you rely on them, like if they say they're going to do something, you know instinctively that they're going to do it. You can easily trust that person, but you got to think about, is that the relationship you have with yourself? If you say you're going to do something on a micro commitment, say I'm going to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, if you know in the back of your mind, well, I'm just going to hit snooze anyway and sleep till 8 a.m., you're not going to trust yourself. And what we want to try and do is build that trust within you, so that when you say you're going to do something on a micro level, you follow through and do it. There's just no question there.
Because that's really required in order to reach your goals. So if you have a weight loss goal and you don't have that self-trust, and you know that you really don't follow through on things, then it's going to be really difficult for you to reach the goal, but not just reach the goal, but then keep the results, which is what we really talk about a lot. We're not really concerned with losing weight in 6 weeks and then gaining it back. What we really care about is losing weight and then never having to lose it again, because you're able to keep it off.
Yeah.
And that requires self-trust.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, when they hear build self-trust, they think about, I've got to do something really drastic. And that's not the case. It's got to be those really small micro commitments.
Yeah.
It's just compounding over time. It builds up.
One more thing to mention as well is, if you are the type of person at the moment where you're sitting there thinking, yep, that's me, I don't follow through, I'm someone who has quit so many times before, I just don't trust that I'm going to be able to change, or I don't feel like I'm capable of changing, what I want to say to you is, it's really possible.
Yeah.
That's why we're talking about this stuff. Your identity is not set in stone, even though it might feel like it is.
Yeah. And the strange thing is, even if you don't have that solid relationship with yourself now, where you feel like, yep, if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to follow through, know that wasn't actually the case all the time. It worked in reverse. So over time, you built up the habit of not following through with what you say you're going to do. So just like that has been built up, and you feel a bit uncertain right now, you can work to rectifying that, to change it the other way so that you do follow through with exactly what you say you're going to do.
Well, yeah. And another thing is there are probably areas of your life where you do follow through.
Yeah.
So have a think about that when you form your identity of I'm the type of person who doesn't follow through. That's probably not even true. There's probably many times where you do things for other people, for example. That's you following through on your word, but you just need to be able to turn that around and apply that skill that you already have to yourself.
Yeah. We're going to sort of talk about 4 main things that you can work on to really stick to your new goals, your new habits, and your new routines. So the first thing that we need to do is make sure that your goals have really clear action plans. If you don't know exactly what you need to do, it's going to be really hard to then follow through.
And when it comes to losing weight, for example, a lot of us will sit there and say, okay, I want to lose 10 kilos. But we never go beyond that, and we never think about, okay, well, how am I going to lose 10 kilos? There's a million ways to lose 10 kilos, and not all of them will give you the end result that you want. If your end result is to lose 10 kilos and then keep it off for life, that's not going to be the same action plan as for someone who just wants to lose 10 kilos and doesn't care if they keep it off or not.
Yeah, that's right. And
if any of those people exist.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, a lot of the times it comes down to just a lack of clarity, down to the minute way you're going to get there, which causes a lot of confusion for a lot of people.
Well, exactly. It's really difficult for you to reach a goal if you don't quite know the direction. It's like saying, I want to get to this destination. There are 7 different ways that you could go to get to that destination. Which way are you going to go?
Yeah.
Often we then get paralyzed by, well, there's so many things I could do. We get overwhelmed.
Yeah.
There's so many ways I could go. Whereas if it's like, okay, I'm going to this place, I'm going to drive to the city today, and this is the way I'm going to get there.
Yeah.
That's super clear. You know exactly where you're going and how you're going to get there.
Well, it's exactly like when you type something into Google Maps and it comes up with 3 different ways.
Exactly.
And it gives you options, and you choose one, and then it commits to showing you that way.
Yeah.
It makes it really easy.
Yeah, it would be really confusing if it gave you all the different ways you could get there.
Turn left. Oh, hang on a minute.
You
Actually,
could turn
just turn
left,
right.
or you could turn right at this intersection.
You make the decision.
Make a decision. Quick.
So how does that actually look when it comes to a weight loss example? So like we said before, if you want to lose 10 kilos, rather than just saying like, I want to lose 10 kilos and then just leaving it.
Or like, I'm going to just eat healthy. That's not really a direction.
Yeah, you want to try and define it even more. So it might be, I'll want to lose 10 kilos by following my hunger cues, eating slowly, and moving my body regularly. That's a really defined way of aiming to lose 10 kilos.
And that just happens to be a way that we teach.
That's right.
I mean, that's essentially how I've personally lost weight as well. So I know that that's an action plan that's really doable and an action plan that works. If you do those things, you will lose 10 kilos. Yeah. We know that. And it's now clear exactly what you need to do if you've just set that goal. It's clear what you need to do every single day. You wake up, you know, okay, today I need to follow my hunger cues. I need to eat slowly, and I need to get some kind of movement in. Also notice that it's not super rigid. It's not, I have to eat these specific foods and I have to exercise for 3 hours. It's moving my body regularly.
Yeah.
That could mean something different for each person. And the key here is that it's flexible. So it's giving you a direction, but it's also flexible. So it's saying that on a really shitty day, you can still listen to your hunger cues, you can still eat slowly, and you can still get some kind of movement in.
Yeah.
So it's having that balance between, okay, I have a really clear action plan in front of me to get to my goal, but also it's flexible and I'm able to adapt to whatever comes my way in order to get there, because shit's going to happen.
That's right.
You're never going to follow the plan absolutely perfectly unless your plan is flexible.
That's right. And consistency is the name of the game with anything in terms of getting results. So the more flexible it is, the more you're able to execute that plan more often, even though little things come up time and time again.
Exactly. And that leads us on to our second point, which is making sure that the action plan that you've set for yourself is really doable for where you're at right now. So again, doable is a different definition for each of us. What's doable for Aaron is not necessarily doable for me. And what's doable for me is not necessarily doable for you if you're listening right now. Everyone's at their own point in life, and this is something that a lot of weight loss programs don't consider. Where are you at right now when you're starting this program or this journey forward? Because that matters, right? It's like that example of the Google Maps. Say, I want to get to the city. Okay, where are you right now?
Yeah,
if you don't know where you are, how do you know what the path is to get there?
Yeah.
And we never think about it.
Yeah, that's right. With the weight loss example, there's no point saying, I want to lose 10 kilos by running every single day if you haven't gone for a run in the last 6 months or you're not regularly running. It's not where you're at right now.
Exactly. And it's the same if, giving a diet example, if you're someone who regularly eats out with friends and you don't like cooking and you're going, okay, I'm going to now start this like super solid meal plan where I'm cooking 3 meals a day, superfood ingredients. I'm going to stock up my fridge with the latest superfoods and I'm going to start cooking every single day, 3 meals a day. That is not going to be doable.
No, it seems elusive with the promise of big results if you can just do that, and then most people get really disappointed when they can't sustain that. And it's not that there's anything fundamentally wrong with you, it's just you took a giant leap from where you are right now into something where you thought this is the best alternative, and we didn't look at
the path there.
Exactly, and where you're starting from.
Yeah, because the truth is, we're not saying that you can't make those big changes in your life. You definitely can get there. Everyone can make these changes and it's possible for you. But as we said before, it's just the path there is going to be different for each person.
Yeah.
So taking the small steps in the beginning is going to be such a better option for you because you get to then collect small wins along the way. Whereas if you take that option of, okay, I'm going to make this massive change overnight, it's going to be so much harder for you to collect wins because if you make a mistake, it feels like this colossal failure.
Yeah.
Whereas if you go, okay, I'm going to do one small thing today, then that's a nice win. All right. And then you feel good about yourself and you feel good to move forward. You keep collecting those small wins. Over time, they become big wins and they create that big change. And all of a sudden, over the span of months or a year, you now have a completely different life.
Yeah, well, and along the way too, because you're breaking it down into small actions and you're collecting small wins, in the process of doing that, you're building that self-trust. You're starting to form that base of self-trust there, where if you say you're going to do something, you're 90% likely to follow through, and then it goes up to 91, 92, 93, and eventually you have that ironclad bond with yourself.
And what's interesting with that as well is you start to learn what's doable for you. And that helps build self-trust because you know that, okay, I'm not going to say that I'm going to do this thing if it's not doable. Which is something that I think a lot of us in the beginning don't really quite understand. And so we'll say, okay, I'm going to do this superfood cooking meal plan.
Yeah.
And we don't realize that's not doable for us. But when you practice the small little things, you start to learn, okay, this is doable for me, this is not. Not yet. And that's the key, not yet. It will be doable for you eventually, but you just have to get there. You have to get to that point.
Yeah. You want to consider where you're currently at, what your current routine looks like, and then aim to make small improvements by 1% each day. Then by the time you get to the year, if you've done that consistently, that's 365 days that you've made small changes. It adds up to quite a lot. So with any habit, you want to make it so small that you just can't say no to. Something that's really, really simple that you can execute on, that there's going to be almost no resistance there. It almost seems so simple, it's silly. That's the ones that you can follow through every single day.
And when you're thinking about that as well, if we think about, and this is something we've spoken about a lot already on this podcast, if you think about your habits like a dial, where you can turn the dial up and down. When you turn the dial down, that's like on your worst day, what can you still do? What can you still do on your worst day? That's what's really doable for you. And then on a really good day, you can turn the dial up and do a bigger version of that habit.
Yeah.
But so many of us think about habits like an on-off switch. We're either doing well or we're failing miserably.
Yeah.
We're either working towards our goals or we've completely quit.
That's right. And one of the other points to that is learning to become resilient is going to be your best friend.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the faster you can get back on track, it's going to serve you in the long run. You know, if we think about it in this example, because this makes perfect sense to just getting back up and just keep going. Like if you're walking down the footpath and you trip over on the footpath, how likely are you going to be to just lay there and just stay there?
Yeah.
Not very likely. You're going to get back up, you know, maybe you brush yourself off and you keep walking.
Maybe you have a little chuckle, look around to see if anyone saw you.
That's right.
And then you keep walking.
But you wouldn't think anything of it. You wouldn't think twice about it because it's a reactive thing where you fall down, you get back up and you keep walking.
Yeah.
You want to think about trying to adapt the same reaction with your progress. So if something comes up and it throws you off, just get back on as quickly as you can.
Yeah, and it might even be helpful to think about the pavement example
in
those moments, because you'll feel pretty silly if you opt to quit and just stay lying on the ground.
That's right.
One really helpful way to implement this sort of dial system is to come up with 3 levels of a habit that you're going to do. And this is something that we teach our clients as well, and that we implement ourselves, because it makes it like a no-brainer for you to be able to stick to your plan if you've got those worst case scenario plans. And if your worst case scenario is so doable that no matter what happens, you'll still do it. And this concept actually comes from a book called Elastic Habits, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's making your habits flexible. And we're all about that. So it's thinking about, okay, if you've got a habit, there's a version of the habit that's going to be doable on your worst day. Then there's going to be a version of the habit that's doable on your absolute best day. So like the best case scenario. And then there's going to be a version of the habit that is your normal day. So what do you do on an average day? And those 3 levels can really be helpful when you're thinking about, okay, how can I tick off my habit for the day? How can I still make progress today? If it's a really bad day, you still do that lowest version of the habit. And if it's a fantastic day, you do the highest version.
Yeah. And a simple way to picture that in practice is one of the things that we suggest to our clients to help them reduce the amount of food they're eating and finish at that 80% full mark is to leave bites behind. So they might start with leaving 1 or 2 bites behind at a meal. And if you're having a really bad day, things are just going like crazy, you might just do that with dinner and that's it. All right. And then on your best day, you might do that with every meal that you're eating throughout the day. And on an average day, that might be dinner and lunch. But you've got varying levels there that you can default to. And that's turning the dial down or turning the dial up, depending on what's happening throughout the day and how well you can execute on that.
Exactly. It makes eating to 80% full a habit that's doable even on that worst day. Because leaving 1 bite behind at dinner, let's be honest, everyone can do that.
Yeah, and it seems so simple that you don't even think twice about it. You go like, well, that's kind of really easy. How's that going to add up? But that's the point. We want it to feel like that so that we can do it no matter what.
And the problem as well with that is so many people don't reach their goals because they wave off habits as being too easy and not worth it.
Yeah.
And the people who do that are the people who don't reach their goals. That's plain and simple.
Well, and it's that on-off thinking, you know, if we either do it all perfectly or we don't do it at all. And we want to think in terms of that continuum again and that dial. So we're turning the dial down on the days that are really stressful or things are going awry, and then we can turn the dial up likewise when things are going really well and we feel like we can do it. So the 4th strategy is to plan in accountability and regular check-ins. So this is huge for a lot of people. And it works best to check in with someone regularly, on a regular basis, you know, and that's why coaching is such a good method for a lot of people, is because it gives them that form of accountability where you're checking in with a coach, or you've got someone who's actually checking up on you to make sure that you're still doing the things that you said you were going to do.
Even if you don't have a coach and you just have a friend who maybe has similar goals to you, or even if they don't, You could just ask them, hey, can I just check in with you each week? Just as that accountability. They don't even have to say anything in reply. It's simply the act of you having to check in with someone makes you much more likely to follow through.
Yeah, and it's sort of playing on our bias as human beings to seek the appraisal of other people. Because as we said earlier in the podcast, what we want to be doing is building that relationship with ourselves where we say we're going to do something and we know without a doubt that we're going to do it. But most of us, by default, if we say to other people we're going to do something, if we then don't do it, it looks bad on us.
Or we feel guilty.
Yeah, so we'll go above and beyond to try and maintain that level of identity with that other person. So we'll do the things that we said we were going to do, even though it's hard, even though it's pushing ourselves outside the comfort zone.
That's why it's helpful as well to make sure that you're not checking in with someone who you're so comfortable with that you won't care if you don't check in. It needs to hurt a little bit if you don't check in with them. And also I'd probably get them to, if you don't check in with them, make sure that they'll message you and be like, hey, you didn't check in. Is everything okay?
Yeah.
Because that can be really valuable for progress.
That's right. You're essentially putting yourself in a little bit of an uncomfortable situation for your own benefit. And it pays off massively for a lot of people.
Yeah. So another way that you can be accountable, and this way is sort of to yourself, being accountable to yourself by ticking off your habits and tracking your habits in a calendar or some kind of habit app or anything like that, where each day you open the thing or you get out your piece of paper or whatever and you tick off what you did or you cross off what you did. Because over time you then seeing those ticks or those crosses gives you that sense of achievement and that sense of accountability of like, okay, here's what I've done, here's what I've achieved. If you don't see that, it makes it much more difficult for you to actually follow through.
Yeah.
The other thing that I find is really helpful when it comes to sticking to goals longer term, and this is especially helpful with weight loss because we don't just lose weight in a month and then never have to do anything again. It's like a long-term goal. And so scheduling reset periods at least every 3 months so that you get that chance for a fresh start. Because again, when we're thinking about setting goals, we're really excited in the beginning. It's a fresh start. We get to set our goals. We're super excited. And then often we'll never check in again. So we set our goals, say at the start of the year in January, because that's where we are right now. And often we'll try to work towards them. But then if we don't follow through, we'll just completely give up and be like, well, I didn't follow through. That's it for the year. Whereas if you've scheduled in your calendar and you have a full reminder system set up where in 3 months' time, you're going to sit down and you're going to reflect on what's happened, then even if those 3 months didn't go according to plan, you get a chance to reset and get back on track.
Yeah.
And it's scheduled in. So it's going to happen.
Well, that's essentially like, from a business perspective, that's like having a quarterly review.
Exactly.
Every quarter you sit down and you go like, what were the 3 months previously? How did it go? And then what are we doing for the next 3 months, for the next quarter?
Yeah. Actually, I love the business example because if a business doesn't do well for the first 3 months of the year, do they just pack up and quit?
Yeah, that's right.
No, you're probably going to keep working and change your strategy and have those meetings. Exactly.
Yeah.
So think about your goals the same way.
Yeah.
If the first 3 months of the year don't go according to plan, or even if the first 2 months are great and then the third month is terrible, you just reflect, you reset, and you move forward. You don't just quit.
Yeah. That's really the key is really breaking everything down into using a system that, you've probably had experience with, like anyone who runs a business or works in a business setting would understand that, you having those quarterly reviews is just something that happens. There's
even
nothing...
with school.
Well, yeah.
Think about school and university. There are terms, there are semesters, because people can't just keep going all year. You need to break.
Yeah.
Step away for a moment, reflect, reset, then you're motivated to get back on track again.
Yeah.
And it's the same with your goals. You need to sort of schedule in semesters or terms
so
that you stay invested in the goal.
That's right. So that's it for today's episode, guys. We hope that you got some value out of today's podcast and that you got some takeaway points of how to stick to those new goals, the routines and habits that you have set for yourself for 2022.
Yeah. So if you've just set goals and you're really excited about them, don't forget to consider what's going to happen 3 months down the track. How are you going to stay on track to your goals? Start thinking about that now.
Planning those contingency plans 3 months ahead of time, and then so you can look back and review. Don't wait for the 3 months to come up and then just find, oh, well, I haven't been doing that, and then I'm just not going to keep doing it.
Yeah. Set accountability for yourself. Set regular check-ins. Make your goals doable.
Yeah.
Make sure you've got a clear action plan, and we have no doubt that you're going to achieve those goals.
That's right. So thanks for listening, guys, and as always, we will see you next time.